it's the same with many families, but the grandparents, like, they will sacrifice themselves by eating the fish head, and they'll give all the grandchildren like the nicer parts of the fish. Did you guys have that in your families?
Yes, that did happen.
I still get it.
When I was a baby, my grandma flew over to help take care of me. The first day she was jet lagged and essentially kidnapped me to go for a walk in the early hours. She didn't know any English, didn't know the streets. Mum and Dad woke up, they freaked out and came looking for us. Grandma wandered home totally fine. She just wanted to show me the pigeons. There is a planned sitcom about a Chinese family written by a non-Asian team. According to those who saw the original scripts, the show perpetuated racist stereotypes. The grandma character spits on the floor, eats fortune cookies all day, and dumplings are taken out of the oven. In response, people have been paying tribute to their grandmas on social media. These real Asian granny stories show us more than stereotype. In fact, these are the strongest women we know. Food.
Whenever I used to go back to Nanzhou, from the age of 8, she would just basically be like, "Oh, come to the kitchen," and then she would be like, "Okay, so this is la mian," and I'd be like, "What?" And so she would teach me like little things like Chinese, like proper Chinese food. It's like you stretch out the flour and then you
swing it like a skipping rope.
Yeah, and she used to give me challenges like how far can you reach your arms out?
Oh!
And like how far can you actually do it?
Is there a special dish that your grandma would make for you that still really lingers in the heart?
My grandma always used to make fish and sausages. I can't remember. Oh, lap chong. Yeah, lap chong. Why do we have lap chong? I think I associate that with my grandma and making those.
When we were kids, me and my brothers, my grandparents would take us for a walk to the night market. And you know, the food in night market are just so tempting, and we were always like, "Can I have this? Can I have that?" And Grandma would always say, "I make better food than they do. If you want those, why don't we go back home and have some food that I made for you?"
So I have a lot of cousins, but I can't even count how many I have, but it's about maybe 20. I was the only one who was aligned in the sort of Chinese horoscope of being the year of the rat. It was my grandmother's birthday, and it's always respectful to give the elders the cake first. I had to give the cake to my grandmother because we shared the sort of Chinese horoscope of being year of the rat. I just remember as a child would always gravitate towards each other, and I always remember feeling quite warm about it.
Sharing.
When I was born, my parents they were in rented accommodation. So I was sent over to my nan's, and so I lived with her for the first 5 years of my life. So she was like my mother, and she provided me with a kind of unconditional love. I used to share a bed with her, and then it got to a point when I was about a bit older, a bit bigger, like maybe about 8 or 9. So she would actually sleep on the floor beside me. She always used to pay for meals. So I think the first time was when I earned my first wage packet. Took her to eat the Hainanese chicken rice, and it was like a restaurant.
Yeah, so good.
But even though it's not a big sumptuous meal or anything, but you know, it didn't cost a lot of money, but I paid for it, my treat to her instead.
Nice.
That is nice.
Yeah.
My mum and my grandma used to just knit and sew together, and one thing that she did for me was this silk waistcoat, and it was really thin. It's a silk waistcoat, right? But her thing was like, wear this, you'll be warm. I wasn't physically warm, so as a kid I didn't really understand. But as an adult now, I'm like, okay, so now I understand.
Yeah, we used to stay at my grandmother's house, and we used to go and buy like all these punk rock records, and we'd bring them back, and we'd play them on the one record player that was in the house. And my grandma used to sit there listening to them with us. You know, these really noisy kind of 3-chord electric guitar, really loud kind of aggressive punk rock songs, and go, "Oh yeah, the drums are very, very powerful," you know.
Okay, crack on. lessons.
One of the things that my grandma used to say to me when I was a child, when you grow up, you know, and you have a relationship with a man, you know, have your own bank account, but if you do have a joint account, you know, what's yours is yours, but what's his is yours too. The thing is that she left her first husband by arranged marriage, so she was already bucking trends. So I think the one thing that kind of struck me was the fact that she was a lot cooler than my mum. I mean, she actually smoked and she drank martini on the rocks. It totally bucks the kind of stereotypes about Chinese grandmothers as well. People kind of think, oh, Chinese grandmothers just eat fortune cookies and spout wise sayings.
Our conversations.
She spoke English, Hokkien. I think she spoke Malay. There's a whole deal made about speaking languages, and people go to universities to study them. And there's that generation, I think, especially the women, not formally educated, but able to assimilate and pick up other people's languages really quickly. You know, it's extraordinary, really. I think she literally learned Cantonese here so she could talk to Chinese people here. You come to the other side of the world, you come to a Western country, and you learn another Chinese dialect. You know, it's just brilliant thing.
Did anyone ever have any trouble being able to communicate with their grandma because of a language barrier?
I was always quite embarrassed speaking to my grandparents. So I'm a mix of Vietnamese and Chinese. Whilst growing up, I was taught to listen to Vietnamese but only communicate back in Cantonese. So yeah, I just found it really weird to juggle all those languages.
So yeah, she used to chuckle a lot whenever either we attempted to kind of communicate with each other. So I always kind of got this impression that she didn't really see us grow up, so we were always smaller in her mind as well. She did used to send over lots of clothes for us, which was kind of ideal for like 6-year-olds when I was about like 15. I just kind of knew there was this love and care for me. Those small offerings helped me kind of feel loved by her in a certain way.
My granddad, I remember both of them really, really enjoyed singing karaoke together. He knows how to read and write. He loves writing the lyrics of the karaoke that he sang. My grandma, because she couldn't read, she can sing because she just learned it, but she doesn't understand a word that is written down by my granddad. After my granddad passed away, I know that she missed him massively, and I just saw her writing of the lyrics. She didn't understand a word that my granddad written down. It's a way for her to sort of like connect with my granddad.
Perseverance.
My grandmother is Vietnamese and my grandfather's Chinese. They left Vietnam in 1979 and went over to Hong Kong, and they were at a refugee camp for a year and a half. They're just all makeshift boats, and they had like hundreds of people on it, and it was just really overcrowded and tough. She had 12 children and a husband. She had to keep all of those children safe, and like just to make sure that they were in this horrendous environment but together. And then they got to the refugee camp. They sought asylum for the UK, and they got accepted. They went to England and arrived in Birmingham.
My grandma, yeah, I felt she was totally Singaporean, even in the bleakest, coldest, rainiest, wet winter, provincial English night. She went from like the hot humidity of Singapore to the middle of winter in Birmingham with an outside toilet in the 50s, do you know what I mean? I can't even imagine. She never stopped missing Singapore, I don't think. She never stopped talking about it. Like, she worked in a factory for a while, she worked in a big industrial laundrette for a while. I don't think she really had to do this. It was all basically for me and my brother, and she always wanted to, she used to say to me every year, I'm going to earn enough money and bring you to Singapore. Maybe next year I'll earn enough money, and she never did. It's all a bit sad, really. Yeah.
Affection.
In Vietnamese culture, it's very unusual to have affection like in a Western way of actually communicating with your elders. It's more functional in terms of you're my grandmother, you're my granddaughter, you're at my house, we'll have food together, you have to respect and do these traditions.
I've got something to share about the affection. It's really interesting because Taiwanese, Chinese culture, it's quite distant. We wouldn't hug each other. But then I came here, I learned to physically express my love and that connection. And every time when I went back and my brother, we would hug our grandma. And one day my mum said to me on Skype, she said, it's interesting, grandma said that only us, me and my brothers, would hug her, and she actually enjoyed that.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, she hoped that other grandchildren would also do the same.
Legacy.
I grew up in a Chinese takeaway because that's very hard work in the catering business, and whenever we go back, I remember the first time I saw my grandma massaging my mum. Because my mum had, at the time, had really bad legs. I walked in on that and I was like, what are you guys doing? And she's like, come over here. And then she taught me how to actually, the right ways to massage, and it's all about pressure and the thumbs going in and then up. Because she wasn't able to see her daughter frequently and look after her, I guess, she wanted me to have the skills. She said something about without pain there's no gain, and without the pain through life, right? You won't get anywhere. As a child, I didn't really understand, but then I look back and reflect on that, and that has informed a lot of choices that I've had in my life as well.